Hi, everybody. Hi. Gosh, you guys, thanks for coming. I mean, there's a lot of fun things to do, so thanks for coming and hanging out with me. What I wanted to come and I'm going to do a couple things over the weekend, but One Life is a little bit of a philosophy I've kind of honed over the last couple years. And it's something I've been noodling on for a long time, having lived in, how many people have like staff jobs where you work for a company or, yeah, I've been there. And how many people run their own thing? Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I have something to say to both of you because I've had one foot in one world for a long time and one foot in another world. But I had an opportunity at a certain point in my life to say, what kind of life do I really want to live? And as I take you through my credentials for speaking to you today, what I came up with is One Life, and I'm gonna explain what that is. So there's a thing that happens when you look at somebody's bio or Facebook. How many times do you look at Facebook and think that you're not living as good a life as everybody else? I do. In fact, Wanderlust Festival did that to me just yesterday. I saw some photo of this woman at this lake surrounded by trees and mountains, and she's like pulling her foot up over her head, and there's a serenity and a beauty and a soulfulness, and I thought, is she having a better festival than I am? So that's what happens also sometimes with somebody when it sounds like they have a really dreamy career. You're like, wow, you worked with Oprah for almost 21 years. That's really great. And that's very dreamy and that's a wild, crazy joyride, but I didn't hatch from an egg on the steps of Harpo Studios. I didn't work for Oprah till I was 35. And it was a entry-level, into the basement kind of job, and I didn't care because I would have mopped the whole studio for free. But it was all those jobs I had before then that kind of set the stage for what I'm about to talk to you about. So here are my credentials, my friends. Typist at a title company. First job right out of college. My parents were super proud. And I didn't know I was interested in commercial title company real estate. But they were interested in paying me $9,800 a year, so I said, hell yes. Here's a little pattern you're going to see in my life. What I tend to do is make the best out of bad situations. So I may get in and be like, wow, this really isn't for me. But you know what? I'm going to be the best darn title company employee that you've ever seen. So I made my way up to second secretary to the general counsel for that same title company. And it's about here when I began to hatch a plan that law school might be a good pivot. So I was living in Dallas. I had spent all my graduation money, so I had about $50, which my parents didn't know, or they never would have allowed this to happen. But I called Dad and I said, Dad, I finally know what I'm gonna do. I'd like to be an attorney. And he said, well, that is gonna be so exciting to watch you go to law school at night while you work during the day and support yourself. And I said, Dad, how's that gonna work? That sounds really hard. When am I gonna have time to do anything else? So that dream died a very quick death. However, I met a friend of a friend who ran a fancy toy store, and next thing you knew, I was the assistant toy store manager at a place where a doll was like, at the time, like $40 was like you could buy a house. So it was very super fancy, and again, making the best of a situation. I'm gonna be a fancy toy salesperson. So I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I've got my new track. And he goes, what is it? And I tell him and he said, is there a salary or any kind of benefits? I'm like, no, that's the great part. There's no limit to what I can earn on 100% commission. And he's like, I don't think that's the right thing for you, hon. So I moved on from that. Next thing you know, I was with a less fancy toy company, and I was the store manager, which sounds really glamorous, but it's not so glamorous when you're in the back of the mall on Christmas Eve and semis are pulling up with literally millions of toys that have to be tagged and pulled out. It was not my favorite thing. Then off I went to be a 7-Eleven manager trainee. That was in the time of Dallas. There was a company called the Southland Corporation. And these two billionaire brothers had 7-Elevens on every corner. And and when you lived in Dallas, that was kind of like a mecca. They had these two bronzy glass towers, mirrored buildings on the main expressway. And you drive down there and you'd think, yeah, that's success, my friends. So, but in order to get to those glass towers, you had to go through the stores. So I had spent some really excellent time doing that. I was a manager trainee. I skipped a few things because it would have been like 3 more slides. You have to really learn how to run it. So you're running the cash register, making coffee, cleaning Slurpee machines, hosing down the parking lot. Ooh, night person didn't show up. Well, then you're going to have to substitute. And I look back on that time and I would say this. I met the most amazing, wonderful, dedicated, lovely people. And I also delivered a baby in a parking lot. And I think that's why I worked at 7-Eleven. I think that child owes his life to me, and that is why I spent 6 years there. However, I wasn't happy. And at a certain point, misery became my brutal compass. And I packed up everything I owned, which was not much, and went back to Northern Illinois and to live with my parents at 27 years old, which at the time, now it's just, that's the way it is. Back then, it was problematic. Then it was, that relatives get together and talk about, she used to have such promise, what's going on? People look at you with real concern. And it isn't like I wasn't already worried. Like I was like, what the hell is happening? So I ended up at lunch with a wonderful man who had a really great job. He was an executive producer at an ad agency. And he said, gosh, I'd really like to help you if there's anything I can do. And I said, I want to do what you do, and can I work for you? Which he's like, oh, God. So next thing you know, I was his secretary. Now, they weren't assistants at the time. They really were secretaries. And the fancy high-tech thing was something called a fax machine. You actually had to load paper into it. And cell phones were the size of pumpkins. And you had to literally use Correcto tape. So if you weren't a great typist, half your time was spent with chalky fingers and all that. So I was not very good at that. However, I took advantage of the opportunity. So that quality that I was talking about is become really good no matter what. I started really honing in on this, and next thing you know, I was a radio producer. Then I was a TV producer for television commercials. And I began to see some sort of calling. Like I felt like I was in the lane. I might not be completely in my sweet spot, but I was in the lane. I was shooting, I was writing, I was editing. That felt really good. That felt really good for me. Like I was at least in the land where I was supposed to be. What I was missing for me was that meaning piece. And when I look back at my whole resume, what I can see, it's Sheri's search for meaning. Because that really actually did matter more to me than anything else. And I could feel like without that piece, I was always going to be on this endless search for something in my life. And it was going to be a full-time search. I would have time for nothing else, and I would not be satisfied till that was done. Now, big break number 2 came really quite miraculously. Because while I was at the advertising agency and why I was doing that, I actually did send my resume to a little television show across the river that was doing some amazing things and about to take on the #1 guy in daytime, who was Phil Donahue. Her name was Oprah. Nobody had ever heard that before. And I was like, I know it's not exactly what I do, but I kind of feel like there's something interesting going on there that I'd like to be a part of. So when they rejected me summarily and said, you're not what we're looking for, I was kind of crushed, but I understood. Of course I'm not what you're looking for. I have no television show experience. Of course I'm not. And many of you go-getters might have mailed yourself in a box or, done a stunt or something, but I didn't have that kind of confidence. If you tell me I'm not what you're looking for, I am putting on my sunglasses and heading out the back door. I will never try again. But what happened here for me was they hired a new person to run this promotional creative services department. And in she came, and she's like, I need to find some new people. She was literally cleaning out a closet and found my resume. And the way I tell the story, I think 3 years had gone by. I mean, as I recall, it was a while. And I get this call, and she says, can you come on in? So I definitely felt like that was a moment of destiny. And then it kind of unfolded. So promo producer for the Oprah Winfrey Show, 35 years old, beginning, basement. Everybody I worked with was 10 years younger than me easily and complaining about the coffee. And I'm like, you guys don't know. This is a little piece of heaven, this place. And then book club producer, supervising producer. I was the executive producer of the last 5 years of the show, which in terms of the stress on my life was probably like 30. It was really wild. And then president of Harpo Studios, president of OWN Network. And those experiences right there were kind of the reason for all those other experiences before then that got me ready to never give up, to keep hanging on, to always do your best. And that seemed to pay off for me. There it is. Yeah. And then last June, I founded my own company. Entrepreneur. And here's really, the truth of the matter is, I was out in LA, I was at OWN, I was meeting with all kinds of young whippersnappers who were founding their own companies, and I'm like, gosh, how do you have such confidence? I'm from a different generation. I mean, if I would have said, Mom, Dad, I'm founding my own company, they'd been like, yeah, okay, anyway. Let's get a salary, let's get some benefits, but I love the feeling of it, and I love the spirit of it, and I love the bravery of betting on yourself like that, and I felt like after all these years and some success under my belt, I was ready to do that. But this is going to come back to one life. So even as I was running the show or running Harpo and having all those really, really amazing experiences, I would go and you'd get asked to do things like this or like a panel. And hi. And I'd get asked to do things like this. And somebody would say, inevitably, how do you deal with work-life balance? And I'd be like, oh. That was hard for me because, and kind of shameful. I felt ashamed because, well, I don't have any. I have no work-life balance. I'm working 75 hours a week. I'm on call all weekend, but that's the price for me. Not for everybody, but for me in order to do some of that. And I would make some things up. I'm like, well, I like to take yoga on Saturday morning, as if that kind of made everything else okay. But it was always super uncomfortable for me because they'd be like I have bulldog children, English bulldogs, Bella and Kissy. Yeah, they're a handful. I'm just saying. I know you've got your human kids, but you don't even know. And then, people would be like, gosh, you really seem to have given up a lot to do that. And again, I would say not everybody would have to. Those were just my skills and abilities. But I started to believe that, first of all, you get one. You get one life, as far as we know right now, right? But you get one life, and you get to decide. So what if you want to spend all your time in creativity and innovation outside the home doing that? And so what if you want to stay home and raise your children because it takes all your focus to do that? And so what if you want to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and kind of mix it up to create your own recipe? So what I began to see is this. You come to a place like a Wanderlust festival and you see people who are literally working on balance. And it really makes sense in a yoga class. It makes tons of sense. You can see it with your own eyes. But when you look at your life, here's something to consider, and this is what has become true for me. The concept of balance is kind of failure, because in order to come into balance, you must be out of balance. And to come into balance, you must be out of balance. And to come into balance, you're out of balance in some way. So you're constantly in some sort aspect of failure, according to that theory, of work-life balance. So what I began to think about is, okay, let's not tell this story that way. Let's really kind of give up that idea of work-life balance. You're not good at it. You're never going to get there. It only makes you feel bad about yourself. It makes you feel like a big failure. And let's talk about the kind of life you really want to live. And we're not shooting for balance. What we're shooting for is a great, happy one life. And what does that look like for you, Sheri Salata? You know, and I don't presume to speak for anybody else, but what does it look like for me? I really don't want my life to be drawers and a desk with my work life, my personal life, my love life. I don't want that kind of disconnection. And that's what it began to feel like to me. Like I had to run to all my drawers and be like, are you full enough? You know, and then, oh, there's too many papers in this one. It felt very disconnected. So where I land is this. I want one life, and I want it to be connected. I want it to feel integrated. I want it to be happy. I want it to feel like a joyride. And maybe part of that's going to start by how I frame it, how I speak about it, how I speak about it to myself. Instead of, oh, you don't have balance again. Oh, boy. You know, maybe I can speak about that differently. So some of the things that I used to help me find my way. And this is relatively new thinking for me. And I'm not sure that I would ever have come to this had I not left my staff life, because I just couldn't get out of that pattern of it. I couldn't get out of the give 100%, give 100%, give 100%, and then some. I actually couldn't do it. So now I see I totally could have done it, because it's all in here. It's all in your story. It's all in what you're saying to yourself. And it starts with this. Other than the fact that when I worked at the title company, I had bought a $500 TV at Montgomery Wards and was making monthly payments and was worried I would not be able to, it would get repossessed. I've always been free. You know, we're at the Wanderlust Festival at Whistler. We're not in the gulag. So there is freedom galore. There's a glorious freedom that I feel like I'm only beginning to tap into, because I had very much a lunch pail sensibility most of my life. You pay me, I'll come in, I'll bring my lunch pail. I like to think of it as kind of like a Midwestern American sensibility, but maybe some of you can relate. That I can get going on that work train, and next thing you know, I'm like, what else am I doing? That's a lot of it. So, glorious freedom. I talk to myself every day about that, how free I am, how free I am, how free I am. I am free, and so are you. Here's the next thing. You think this would be fairly obvious to me as a producer for most of my life. You are the visionary. You are the visionary. You are the visionary. What are you visioning? What's the vision? You're the visionary. You're the dreamer. You're the producer. You're the person who makes it happen. You're the person who dreams it up. What is it? And it really isn't just a bunch of goals lined out. I don't think that language is speaking to us anymore. I feel like there's something, especially if you're the kind of person who wants to, who identifies with like a brand like Wanderlust, you need some words that inspire you. What is your vision? What are your dreams? You're the one in charge of that. Not your mom, not your dad, not the peanut gallery in your life, not your boss. You're the one in charge. You're the visionary. This was a revelation to me, my friends, because, and there's a really great story. It was back in my Oprah show days. I was standing in the hallway and Jerry Seinfeld was on the show. Now, Jerry Seinfeld is wise. It's all kind of behind his Jerry Seinfeld curtain, but he's super wise, been meditating for like 38 years. And when you see him off camera, he's just wise. He just has these nuggets. But we were sitting there like, Jerry, it's so hard. We work so hard. And then we have to do this. How many shows a day do you do? We do 2. My goodness. Da, da, da. And then Jerry stopped the whole thing and said, but it's your life to design. And we're like, yeah, okay. Anyway, gotta go. But you are the scheduler. You decide the quality of your days. Why did I not know that? I did not know that. I acted, who was pulling the strings? I mean, listen, Oprah would have given me anything, take the time off, and I'd be like, no, I gotta be here. No, I gotta do this. No, I'm holding up everything with my two hands. You are the scheduler. You decide the quality of your days. Whose job is it? Become a chooser. This is another thing. This was a real moment of illumination for me. Who, what, where, when, why? I'm in charge of all that for my life. Like starting with the who. How many relationships in your life need some editing? You know what I'm saying? Like if you're like, well, so-and-so wants to do this, or I haven't seen so-and-so for so long. No, who, what, where, when, why? It seems like kind of elementary, even as I'm saying it to you. But as much authority and supposed power as I had in many stages of my career life, this was not really obvious to me, that I was in charge of my own self this way. I was raised by great people who'd be like, well, you have to. Why are we doing that? 'Cause. Why do we have to go to La-di-da's house? We don't even like them. 'Cause that's what you do. So I had lots of that to overcome, but when I really peeled this apart and said, if I'm willing to be the visionary of my life, if I'm willing to take responsibility for the quality of my days, and I decided I was, then these kinds of choices are going to be super, super critical. And I'm going to have to make those choices from an absolute place of love for myself. Like nothing's more important than me. Nothing. And I don't think I'd made any decisions that way. Everything else was more important, always. Make your to-be list. I never had one of those. It wouldn't have had room on my desk for all of my to-do lists. That was kind of how I organized my life, to do. And if I was trying to create some sort of plan or vision, it would be like, to do in 30 days, to do within 90 days. By the end of the year, even my New Year's resolutions were like massive to-do lists. And that's okay. That's okay if you need a little bit of a moment-by-moment roadmap, but it's only okay if you know this, if you have this list. Who do you want to be? Like, what kind of person? I kind of want to be that woman who's in that photograph down by the lake. I mean, that looks really good. But who do you want to be? Do you want to be, like, what are those qualities that you want to inspire within yourself? Do you want to be known for, wow, compassionate, wow, really sees me? I have a great friend who, she's one of those kinds of people you walk away and you're like, wow, I'm pretty great. Because she reflects, she holds up a mirror of such love and value for your life and your existence that I watch it happen with everybody. And I think, gosh, that's a good thing for a to-be list. That people leave your presence going, not about you, like, she's so great, but it's like they feel better about themselves. What a great thing that is to be. So that's a great way to spend your time. And that's what I'm working on in my one life is, what is my to-be list? Who do I want to be? And here's why that's become so important to me in my life. We are living in a different time. If you are on your way to 40 or 50 or 60, you may live to be 110. That is what modern medicine and yoga and organic food is doing. You need a plan for that second half. And then my favorite. So here's what I want to say to Jeff, co-founder of Wanderlust, who I love so much. I do know. Find your true north. I found it. I know where it is. It's happiness. Now, seems like a really soft word. And it can feel like easily dismissed. But this is the compass. This is what you're doing everything for. This is the yoga practice. This is why you're meditating. This is why you're falling in love. This is why you're having children or not having children or having dog children. This is what you're doing it for. It is that's where we're going. And that's what we want to be. That is the total end game is happiness. So if you can start and stop acting like, for me, it's like, quit acting like that's like a side effect. And understand that's the end game. This is where you always wanted to be from the time you could, toddle around the floor. You're looking for happiness. You want happiness in the moment. You want to create a life of happiness. That's what it is. So when I put those things together for myself, what I started to see is this second half of my life is mine to design. And I am the visionary. And it's not too late for me to make the rest of my dreams come true. And I can do that with so much love and appreciation for every mistake I made, and you can see I made many, for every wrong road I went down, and you can see there was many. But I get to come back at this point in my life and say, wouldn't change nothing. All was helpful, super instructive. I'm a late bloomer. Sometimes it's good just to bloom it all. And that's the life of my dreams. One life. Thanks.